Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the Synthesis Webinar Series. This is your host, Eric Cavanaugh. The topic for today, it's a hot one, folks. Will AI eliminate reports and dashboards? Of course, that's talking about artificial intelligence. We have a great lineup for you. Of course, yours truly up top, Wayne Eckerson, head of the Eckerson Group, is online today. We have Daniel Shaw-Dennis, Senior VP of Global Strategic Marketing, and Ivan Xiao, Head of Product Marketing over at Yellowfin. Those guys are calling in all the way from the other side of the planet. I'll just say a couple quick words at the top of the hour here. We're going to be exploring AI all year long, folks, because that's how big an impact it's going to have. And actually, I'm working on a presentation myself right now that kind of talks about how artificial intelligence will provide another whole lens through which we view the world. I personally don't think, just to kind of throw out the thesis here, that BI, traditional business intelligence and dashboarding, is going to go away, but it's going to be augmented significantly by the algorithms. So I kind of view it as there's going to be two different eyes through which you view the world. One is the traditional view, dashboards fueled by business intelligence, data warehousing, and so forth, and the other eye is going to be insights surfaced by your artificial intelligence, and it's really going to be the fusion of those two perspectives that I think is going to give us some really interesting depth perception to understand what's happening in our business, what's happening in our marketplace, and figure out what we can do about all of that. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Wayne Eckerson and hand him the keys to the WebEx. Folks, don't be shy. Send your questions in at any point in time using the Q&A component of your webcast console. Do that, or the chat window as well. We will archive this event, as we do always, so you can check it out later or share it with your colleagues. But with that, Wayne, take it away. Tell us what you think about AI versus dashboards and traditional BI.
Thanks, Eric, and welcome, everyone. Yeah, Eric kind of stole my thunder there right up front. So, but that's a good way to set the context for this presentation, which for me will go about 15 minutes. And then we'll pass it over to the guys from Yellowfin, and I'm very excited to see what they've got to present. So let me there we go. So just to give some broad level view of what's going on here, in my opinion, we've had three generations of BI tools. And the first generation was from the 1990s to the early 2000s, and it's what we call traditional BI. And it's where IT generated most of the output using desktop tools, which were then packaged into suites. And each of those tools were purpose-built for a specific part of analytics, whether reporting or dashboarding or ad hoc work or OLAP work. Then around 2010 or so, the second wave came in, and let's call this self-service BI, and we're still in this generation right now, and this is what we call business generated. So kind of the power to create artifacts using data moved from IT to the business thanks to self-service tools like visual analysis and discovery tools, which then kind of moved and consolidated into what we're calling analytic platforms, kind of an end-to-end analytics environment that's open, extensible, embeddable. And now we're on the cusp of the third generation of BI, which I'm calling augmented BI, and Eric hinted at this. And this is where BI and our analysis is in part generated by machines. So let's call this augmented intelligence. And this is kind of the focus of what I'm going to talk about a lot today. Now, part of what we're talking about is will AI replace reports and dashboards? And dashboards kind of came into being around the early 2000s. I wrote a book on them in 2005 and the second edition 2010 or so, and that really was the heyday. They're still part and parcel of everything that people do from a reporting and analysis perspective. They're a foundation, I suppose, of BI still today. So the question is before us that we need to answer in this webcast is, will AI replace these things, which have been a foundation of BI for at least 10, 15 years now? So just to harken back to the beginning of the dashboard era, this came from my book. And I called a well-designed dashboard back then a MAD dashboard because it had 3 layers: monitor, analyze, and drill to detail. The top layer was graphical with KPIs. The second layer was more OLAP-like with dimensional analysis and summary data. And the bottom layer was the detail, either in a report or a data warehouse. And people tended to enter these dashboards at different layers depending on their role. And these are generally great, still are great. Fundamental way that we want to analyze data. Well, actually, it's more like monitoring performance is what these really are good for. You typically want to put 8 to 12 KPIs at the top layer and then allow people to drill down, filter against 20 dimensions, which pretty much creates a pool of 1,000 metrics overall, which is a good sandbox for most business users, not big enough to answer, I'd say, about 60% of their questions on a day-to-day basis, but not so big that they get lost. Used to monitor key process, tailored ideally by role and by user. Best done when put on a mobile device so people can take them with them, and even better yet, when something is important or something changes that's worth looking at, just ping users with an alert and then they'll look at it. So this is the kind of the current state of most dashboards today, maybe even the ideal state. But there are some challenges. So a dashboard is really only designed to answer predefined questions. You got to know in advance what people want to look at, what they want to monitor, and obviously what targets they want to monitor things by. What are the goals? It also doesn't surface anomalies, trends, correlations that may be lurking beneath the surface of that top layer of the dashboard. As a result, users might miss significant trends, significant issues. They may not pop unless they take the time to go look for them. Also, a dashboard really is a point-in-time snapshot. For strategic dashboards, which are more like scorecards, that might be updated monthly or quarterly. A departmental dashboard might be updated weekly or monthly. An operational dashboard might be updated in near real time, hourly, or daily. But they're all point-in-time snapshots, not real-time data. And they're hard to change. You're going to need someone, either a power user in these days of self-service to change it, or IT. And they're not really predictive. They can't really give you a forecast of what's going to happen necessarily, unless it's hardwired into the dashboard. So that's kind of the state of the art today for dashboards. Now, let's switch gears and take a look at artificial intelligence. This is a big tent from a technology perspective. It spans everything from rules, which expert systems, RPA, robotic process automation, and even natural language generation tools are built on, simple Boolean rules, to machine learning, which has been the craze for the last couple of years, using supervised learning and unsupervised learning techniques. Things that we've come to know as classification, regression, decision trees for supervised learning, clustering, segmentation, and anomaly detection for unsupervised learning, where a model can be created on its own without training and labeled data. But certainly what's really popular now, what people are trying to wrap their minds around, are these deep learning techniques. The most well-known are artificial neural networks that mimic neural networks in the brain. And these are enabling us to do really powerful things with speech recognition, language generation, image recognition. But we're seeing some even more powerful techniques emerge, like generative adversarial networks, where you have neural networks that duel each other and learn from each other. And these can generate realistic photos and videos, which in many cases is what scares me the most about AI. It might be hard in the future to know what's real and what's not when you're looking at a photo or a video. And then finally, reinforcement learning is kind of the epitome of operations research, where you have a very constrained environment with a reward, and these algorithms can teach themselves how to play the game, so to speak. And these were the algorithms that were used to defeat the AlphaGo champ. And in fact, the computer that beat the AlphaGo champ, which is one of the more difficult board games around, only took 4 hours of training before it could beat the world champion in that game. So very powerful tools in artificial intelligence. All right, so now we've talked about BI, we've talked about dashboards, we've talked about AI. So let's put them together a little bit. At Eckerson Group, we did a report called AI is the New BI, and we examined how AI is infiltrating BI and how, what features within the BI tooling are going to be enhanced or enabled with AI. And we looked at a range of functions, so reporting and analysis for more casual users, data preparation, model creation, model management for power users. And you can see here almost 24 different functions are enabled by AI or really are enabling BI users to do AI, do model creation and management, for example. So I'm not going to go into these right now, but we'll give examples of these in the next 2 slides. And then I'll focus on 3 of them for the last part of this webcast. I'll go into some detail. So what is the long-term impact of AI and BI? Well, it's all goodness, really. AI is going to make BI users much more productive because it's going to do things automatically that used to have to be done by hand. So it supports auto-charting. So you give it a data set or a query, and it automatically determines what's the best chart to display that data. It's going to do auto-dashboard creation, so you no longer have to spend time creating dashboard. It will give you a sample dashboard, and then you can obviously fine-tune it from there. It's going to take a lot of the pain and time and effort out of data preparation with a lot of auto-modeling features, for instance, and auto-formatting, as well as intelligent data typing and auto-joining. It's very powerful stuff, great productivity booster. Probably most important, it delivers faster time to insight. So it's going to surface things automatically for the user. All they really have to do is click a button, and it will kick off some algorithms in the background that will work on the data set that's defined by a chart or a dashboard, and it will automatically surface things that are of interest, outliers in the data, trends in the data, correlations with the key metric or dimension that you want to focus on. It's also going to support natural language queries using NLP technology. So instead of having to write out a query in SQL or point and click to create a query, you can certainly just type natural language into a search box or speak your query, and it will find the right result and display it in the right visualization. Natural language generation, this is where you give the tool a chart or a dashboard, and it will provide a text explanation of what's going on. So if you're a newbie to an organization and you really don't understand the business or understand the data, it will explain it to you. It's a great way to upgrade analytic skills, which is the next benefit. It's also going to show related content, things that you might want to look at if you're looking at this. So it's going to urge people on, coax them down the analytical path, get them to think and act more analytically. And then finally, upgrade analytic skills. It's going to recommend analysis and actions. It's going to help users create report prototypes that they can pass on to professional report developers, for example. Same thing with analytical models. Power users can now create those inside a BI tool. If they're pointing in the right direction, they can pass those over to regular data scientists to productionize. As I said above, they can help step users through the analysis process and upgrade their ability to do good analysis and generate relevant insights. On the whole, I think the biggest benefit will be that we'll move BI from, especially the analysis part of BI, move it from a hypothesis-driven process where you really have to know what might be causing the top line changes that you're looking at in a dashboard. You have to have a hypothesis and then go look for it. Where with AI, it's going to surface root causes automatically, and then all you have to do is go and validate that and take action. So it's going to shorten the time between data and action by automating some of the insights. So on the whole, I think we're going to see an evolution in this third generation of AI for BI. We're going to start out with automated intelligence, and I've talked about some of the things that do that, like auto charting, auto dashboard creation, auto data typing and formatting, things that happen automatically. And then we just have to really check it to just make sure it's correct, and looks right, and maybe do a little retooling if necessary. And then we're also going to move, and we already see this today, to augmented intelligence, which Eric mentioned. It will start to do some of the insight generation for us. And all we have to do then is see if that makes sense and then take action. And then finally, the end game really is where the BI tool, and this might scare some people, makes the decisions by itself. Now, we'll have to be very careful when we get to this point, but I've known companies already where in an operational setting in particular that was not customer-facing but internal-facing, they believe that the algorithms make better decisions than the humans, so they don't even have the humans check the output of the algorithms anymore. They just let the algorithms run and then use them to take action. So obviously in things like autonomous vehicles, this is already happening. All right, so let me take a look at 3 AI use cases and how AI is transforming BI. One is BI search using natural language processing. One is automated insights. And the final one is anomaly detection, which I think is actually the most exciting of all. So BI search, as I described earlier, is you type a query using natural language into a search box or speak it. And the tool automatically helps refine that query with suggestions, as you can see here in the diagram, and can help understand the context of what you're asking, since words can be ambiguous. That's where the real art and magic is of this technology, and can really help users become more analytical in the way they use these tools. So today, BI tools are just way too hard to use, and we've been saying for a long time that really what we need is a Google for BI. Well, now that's here in the form of BI search or natural language queries. And it's always been the case that casual users couldn't do ad hoc. And they don't want to do that all too often, but when they do, they found it was just way too difficult to do it. Now with something like this NLP search, querying in an ad hoc fashion is easy as just typing or speaking words. And then for power users, it's always been a struggle to explore data quickly, to understand what's going on. But now with this type of technology, it's very iterative and very quick. So it also helps power users improve the way they explore and analyze data. So that's one of the biggest benefits of AI's impact on BI. So the second feature is what we're calling generally in the industry automated insights. And this is kind of a one-button click to generate deeper insights in the data than what you're just seeing in a chart or a dashboard. So by querying or click, you can activate algorithms that can segment data, correlate data, and spot anomalies automatically without you having to have a hypothesis or dig around the data, pivot, sort, filter, all that kind of thing to figure out what the heck's going on underneath. So the problem is that it's taken a long time with traditional BI tools to discover insights. With these types of automated AI tools, it's going to shorten that cycle. The bigger data comes, and as we know today, we're in the era of big data. That makes searching and exploring today even harder. So automated insights, there's no coding involved. You don't need a data scientist. There's no modeling involved. Really, it's just one click to get some deeper insights than what you could get otherwise. And I think the real challenge here is to do this at scale with lots of data and lots of users. So we'll see how well the BI tools hold up to that test, because all of this is very new. And then the final problem is that, even if you are exploring the data, we all have biases that may obscure insights and anomalies. The machine is not biased at all. Well, you could say some of the algorithms might be because they're all created by users, but in general, it's going to take a more objective analysis of the data and surface what it finds. So no knowledge of data science is required. The last and final feature is anomaly detection, and I think you'll see a demo of this from Yellowfin. And I think this holds a lot of potential, and I think this is what's going to get us to autonomous intelligence, and especially in operational settings. So with anomaly detection, we can give the machine or the algorithm any metric we want. And I've seen some tools provide tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of metrics to be analyzed and monitored and tracked at once. And using machine learning, it will understand and create kind of a pattern or a model for how that metric performs over time. And then it will alert you when the performance deviates from that norm. So this will create an anomaly that will create an alert and then ask you to take action and look into it. And I think really that's just the first step, is to alert users to anomalies in metrics that might be buried inside of their data. The next step is to apply machine learning to figure out, well, okay, if that was an exception, what caused it? And then after that, we're going to apply machine learning to figure out, well, all right, if that happened and this was the cause, what do we do to fix it? And if this happens, then maybe we can predict when it will happen again. And maybe we can use these algorithms to actually figure out how to optimize the process overall so we don't experience these exceptions in the future. So when you string together those tasks, all enabled by artificial intelligence, you get to autonomous intelligence. So problem, it takes time to discover insights. Big wide data makes analysis harder, and analysis bias may obscure insights and anomalies. I think that was what we saw in the last slide, so that's probably an error. So let me just sum up here. We started this webcast with the question, will AI replace reports and dashboards? So for executive dashboards, otherwise known as scorecards, those things that the CEO typically puts together on a monthly or quarterly basis, I don't think AI will replace those, because those scorecards really are more strategic tools. They enable the CEO and the organization to understand and document and track what they want to focus on as a company. And they boil it all down to a dozen or so metrics. And obviously that's a great way to turbocharge productivity. You get everyone aligned and marching in the same direction. I don't think AI is going to enhance those too much. Departmental dashboards where you're monitoring key business processes, yes, I think AI will have a bigger impact. As I said, we'll probably start to use BI search, and in fact, voice-activated search via a mobile phone, I think will be the future of these dashboards, because most managers are mobile, have to be up and about to understand what's going on in their department. And I think they'll also be a lot more predictive, incorporating forecasting based on past activity. And as I said earlier, I think these dashboards will be a starting point, and then AI will help surface things automatically that may not be intuitively obvious from looking at the top-level dashboard. So you don't have to start with a hypothesis. You start with the AI tool and the automated insight and use that as your baseline. And as you can imagine, I think for the operational dashboards, I think eventually, once we really learn how to apply machine learning to all those different tasks, you know, from anomaly detection to root cause analysis to remediation, prediction, and optimization, I think we can really optimize and automate operational decision making. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Eric. You can take the ball back, Eric, and we can move on with the second part of this webcast.
All righty, and folks, we got a bunch of time left here, and time for questions in particular. So don't be shy. I'm now handing the keys over to Ivan Siao of Yellowfin. Ivan, share your screen and take it away.
Thanks, Eric. All right. So, again, I think thanks for Dwayne for setting this up in terms of the three generations of BI. You know, that's a really exciting time for us. And that's pretty much why we're here. Yellowfin is a top 5 global analytics vendor today. We've been known to consistently lead in innovation and cutting-edge technology in BI and analytics. For Yellowfin, we serve over 27,000 companies today in over 75 countries, and more than 3 million end users use Yellowfin every day. Now, just a very quick housekeeping. You know, I am Ivan Siao. I head product marketing for Yellowfin. I'm joined today by Dan Shaw-Dennis, who's the SVP for strategic marketing, and we'll take you through some of the new things that Wayne was talking about, especially around automated insights and the autonomous stuff. Let's jump straight into it. Now, despite huge leaps in data and analytics technology, I think we can all agree that business leaders today are only marginally better than what they had 20 years ago. You can actually see the dashboard line go across all 3 generations of BI in Wayne's slide. You know, again, business leaders still do not understand the businesses well enough, and insights are still very much only available for the few, which is why the adoption rates are sitting about 30-35% today. Now, businesses have access to super fast analytical databases. They've got streaming data. We have everything, you know, the works. But whilst all of this technology deals with a data problem, we recognize that it does not really deal with the analytical user experience problem, as Donald Farmer likes to put it. So overall adoption across the enterprise is very, very much still an issue. But again, the issue is everyone wants insight, and they all want insights that actually matter. So why is this still a problem? And it's, again, if you really look at the heart of it, it's because today's dashboards have actually fallen short. And why have they fallen short is because they've actually been shoehorned into every single analytical use case. Now, we're not saying dashboards are bad. It's exactly not what we're saying. A good dashboard should tell you exactly how your business is tracking. But dashboards today have become the organizational bumper sticker, right? So you include every API, you include every dimension, you pack everything into a small window, and then you aggregate it away. You group it, you average it, just to fit everything into a view of the dashboard. And then the vendor's workaround is to offer you more interactions to get to what you want. So you have the ability to filter, you have the ability to slice and dice your way into the data, to drill, to really find what you really want, which is the insights. But that process is actually not sustainable with all the problems that Wayne talked about earlier, you know, with data growing and, you know, data science skills not growing, you know, accordingly. So that piece of insight becomes so hard to find. I've got a great quote over here from Rita Salam, where she actually drills into the actual problem of finding insights, where with the current dashboard approach, it is simply impossible to explore every single combination that's possible, much less determining which findings are actually the most relevant or actionable. So now we've talked about this problem for quite some time over here in Yellowfin, and in the beginning of 2018, we unveiled our first foray into augmented analytics with what we call assisted insight. And this is our way of actually bringing automated insights to business users and data analysts alike. It's available today in Yellowfin. We can fire this off in both the dashboard level or when you're actually exploring a new data set. Now, both business users and data analysts can actually click on a data point and actually ask a question. So the question could be around topics like, explain this metric to me, or compare the performance of this metric against this metric at some other time. Now, based on the actual question, Yellowfin scans the data and actually produces key drivers that are actually relevant and significant around those points. So explaining the performance of that metric. Now, it also does this by providing automated visualizations and natural language nowadays to explain the insight to the user. So the user doesn't actually need to know data science and how it works. It doesn't need data modeling skills. You just click the button and it happens, and it tells you the insight. Now, this naturally gave decreased time to insight for business users at the dashboard, but it also helped data analysts to start analysis from automated insight rather than going through an entire data set blindly. And then, again, this is great. This completely changed how people consume and use dashboards with search and automation. But the problem there, while we're trying to solve it, also remains, what question are you, actually trying to ask, and how do you ask it? When do you know to ask it? Where do you ask it? So it's very much still dependent on the user spotting something intriguing and then asking a question. So finding that insight, that discovery, is still accidental. And we know businesses can't rely on people getting lucky and finding what they need to drive the business forward. Not all of us can be Christopher Columbus. So there has to be a better way. We need predictable discovery. So how do we actually provide visibility into all the data, surface the stuff that actually matters, and ensure it happens in a timely manner? And to look at all of these points, we actually need, as an industry, an automated solution that cuts through all that clutter in your data and only elevates the stuff that actually matters to you when you're looking at it. So we've done this with Yellowfin Signals, and we say proudly that it is the only way to automatically discover and surface the most important things in your data as they happen. So if you're wondering, okay, that's great. So what does it actually do for the business? Well, besides discovering outliers and changes in trends immediately, Yellowfin actually helps reduce the analysis fatigue by scanning all of your data and specifically delivering what's relevant to you. It's also looking to reduce the human bias that Wayne was talking about earlier on, as what delivered is actually significant and relevant specifically and automated as well. So all of this actually gives a very clear accelerated time to value. So let's drill into signals and really look into what they are. Now, signals is essentially time series analysis. It's just simply taking many, many slices of your time series data based on your available dimensions. So it's just slicing, if you look at it holistically, horizontally and vertically, all right? It's breaking it off into many, many small points, and the computer is looking over all of these points. Then it's automatically delivering what we call statistically significant changes. It's not really based on a manual threshold-based alert. You're not really telling the machine to go, tell me something when it's more than $100 in terms of revenue. It's not doing that. It's actually scanning and asking all the questions all at once based on the algorithms that are consistently running. Now, we have 6 types of what we call analysis patterns. You can see them in the dot points below, spikes and drops, breakouts. When something new drops into your data, when you lose a customer, whether it's changes in trend direction, volatility, or aggregation, we track all of that and tell you immediately when that happens. And we'll be adding to this list as the months progress. Now, we're using algorithms that have been around for a very long time in mathematics, as well as some new ones. The key thing also is that Yellowfin actually learns. So it's learning all the time from user interaction and inference to ensure that we're actually delivering what we call personalized and relevant insights. So the more you use it, the smarter the signals get. Okay? And our metadata layer is actually enabling a lot of this smartness. So one thing I want to point out is that a lot of BI vendors in the past have ignored the metadata layers for years and called it boring. But guess what? You actually need it for augmented analytics. Now, this was always a very interesting and hot topic for us, so we've always been working on it, and we're actually enhancing that metadata layer now into a very modern application of it, as you can see. So let's take a step back now very quickly and look at the actual process now. What is the process of data discovery that we have today in businesses? So the soon-to-be old way, as we call it, is built on a process that's actually manually driven. So it cannot be replicated consistently on an ongoing basis. The analysts, if you look at the left, must prepare the data. They have to create a chart. They have to build dashboards which business users must then actually access and use. Business users are expected to filter, slice and dice their way to find the patterns that may or may not identify as a signal. Now, with each step in the process, the chance of success drops significantly. And the chance of identifying a signal at the end, on the right, becomes so low that it actually becomes accidental. Now, if you look at the bottom here, in a second, much shorter process, is that with automated analysis, what happens is the analyst prepares the data, and then the machine, with certainty, will find the signal, and the user simply receives that signal. The outcome, in this case, is predictable, it's purposeful, and the process of discovery actually shrinks from 7 steps to 2. So what really happens is, the secret sauce is all about continuously analyzing the live data, all right? It's not looking at desktop tools, it's not looking at desktop workbooks, it's live in your data. You keep scanning, week 1, week 2, you might not find anything in its predictive analytics, but then if something deviates from the actual trend, then that's a signal to you, and then we notify you of that. And it keeps going, and as long as it finds something that's a deviation, bang, we'll produce a signal, and then we alert you as changes happen. As part of the entire secret sauce, besides being automated and continuously running against your live data looking for significant changes, it's also personalized. So we talked about user interaction as well as inference, but it also determines if these signals over time are actually important or interesting to you. And I'll describe that at length in the next few slides. And it's also correlated. It finds patterns that are related across all your data sets. So, you're not just running on, say, CRM data. If you have sources that are across finance and social media and marketing data, it will scan across all your data sets and actually find those correlations and surface them to you as well. So enough about me talking about it. Let's just show you how it actually works. I'm going to switch over now to my browser, and I'm going to log in. So I'm logging into Yellowfin now, and you can see I'm logging into my timeline. I'm Dolt Whitney. I've taken on the role of a crime data analyst, as you can see. Now, if you've not seen a timeline before, this is very much like a Facebook feed that's based on chronological order. I'm able to see activities of my peers and colleagues within the enterprise. I can see, what's happening with Fred Pennyworth that I've connected to, what everyone has been working on, what we created, what analytical content we're actually looking at, and what decisions we've actually made in terms of our AI and in BI. So again, this is really the collaboration workflow that we are really good at. And what I'm going to do now is actually draw your attention to the left-hand side of the screen, which is stuff that's happened recently. So what Signals does is it runs across your live data. In this case, it's running over the Chicago crime data set, which you can get from the Chicago government portal if you wish. And then it's basically surfaced 6 different kinds of signals to me. Now, the narrative is, again, describing what's actually happening in terms of the actual signal, and the color coding is depending on what I've actually deemed to be a good or bad thing. So, for example, it's tracking crime incidents. So if incidents go up, that's obviously a bad thing. And then I've made it to be colored as orange. And when it actually goes down, that's a good thing, and that's blue. So that visually tells me very quickly what to concentrate on if I like. Again, I can choose to explore any of these signals at once and look deeper into it if I wish. Now, what I'll actually do is I'll click into this particular one because Fred Pennyworth has really taken a look at that signal earlier today and has alerted me to go, hey, check out some of the key drivers here, and then I'm going to now engage him in the conversation and look deeper into the signal. So rather than accidentally crawling across this on a dashboard, and hopefully kind of find it, the signal has already picked up automatically that spike on 11 April where the crime type was assault. And I'm interested in this because, as crime data analyst, I'm part of a team that wants to make that count go down. So there's a lot of goodies happening on the screen here, so I'll step you through it. Firstly, you see the actual signal. It's explained in clear English terms, natural language, that what's actually happening. It's increased by 55% over this time period. The actual amount of increase is 76 count, and it represents 55% over the moving average. What's really happening here is that Yellowfin has not just looked at the data point for, say, today, if you're looking at the 11th of April, it's actually gone into the historical performance and it's built a confidence corridor, or as you know it, a confidence interval. And we've actually predicted how the performance should actually behave, and if it actually steps out of that corridor, then it becomes a spike. So I can look into this at any time by simply moving the time slider if I wish. I can also look at other signals that might have occurred in the past, okay? But today we're just going to concentrate on the 11th April one, so I'm going to move that back there. Now, the tab on the right is where it starts getting really interesting. So Yellowfin Signals has decided these are the metrics in your data set perhaps you want to look at as well. And we call them related metrics. So I have weather data for Chicago every day for that period, and I'm going to now overlay that across my signal, and that's available to me because Signals is suggesting that to me. Go, hey, take a look at this. Now, the interesting point is that I've, just by looking at this, realized that as the salt spiked from 10 to 11, the weather data also goes up as well. And that's interesting to me because it sort of decides that, hey, maybe there's something to do with the weather in the city at that time as well. So that's something that I might bring into my analysis later. And the correlated, as we talked about earlier before, is actually scanning across all other data sets that might have signals running as well, and it's actually comparing the other signals from other data sets and to see they're actually correlated or not. Well, how we do that is that we grab those signals, we overlap the time periods together and check the pattern, and then we run correlation analysis on it. If it scores high enough, then we present them here in this chart here to let you have a look. So I can look, okay, so crime type for weapons violations have also increased around the same time period, and a lot of these incidents also seem to be happening in school and colleges between those time periods as well. Now, we're not saying correlation is causation here, but it could be meaningful for analysis. Now, if you now scroll to the bottom here, again, this is simply a discussion stream where we engage in collaboration. I can choose to attach anything as part of my decision-making process here, whether it's a link or a file, an image, or existing analytical content. I can also check relevance and the relevance and importance of this signal. This is important because it's starting to become personalized. I can track that assaults actually make up about 8% of the entire incident total for this time period. So I know in terms of importance, it's about 8%. Now, this number here can actually change depending on what sort of access you have to the data sets. If I'm a crime analyst that is, say, looking at burglaries and violations, then assaults will not be as important to me when I'm viewing the signal, and that number will change according to who I am in the business. The analysis, so this is the automated insights that we talked about. This is the assisted insights feature that we rolled out earlier on, folded into signals here. But what it does is it compares the performance of the 11th of April for that spike to yesterday, which is the 10th of April, and then scans what are the things that could have contributed to that change in these two time periods. So it actually goes across all your data sets and then scans and tells you that, hey, that temperature, the average daily maximum, when it increases, there's also a relative change in terms of assaults spiking. And that's actually something that's quite relevant and quite important. And it goes further on and says, hey, you should also know that this spike is also caused by an increase in non-domestic crimes. So that's, again, the second variable that's important to this point. And then it then compares across all variables at the end. So it goes from single, double, to triple variable analysis. And then it finally decides that ultimately, as the weather goes up, non-domestic crimes also go up, and it comes in this hit grid over here, which you can check. And again, this is something I wouldn't have known unless I looked at every possible combination in the dashboard. And that's been done for me now in Yellowfin Signals in a single click. And again, I can choose to automatically open this data set and perform further exploration and analysis as a power user or as a data analyst. And that data modeling, all of that grouping is done for you automatically with a click. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now and actually talk a little bit more about signals at the end. So you can now see that Yellowfin Signals basically separates the signal from the noise. The noise of data from a dashboard is actually just picking out what's really important and sending that to you. And really, who benefits the most here? It's the business leaders. It's a line of business people. It's people who do not have the time or the inclination to go through a dashboard or to scan rows of reports and do not actually have the data literacy skills to make optimal use of the tools they have access to today. And for the data analyst, we're saving so much time on manual discovery. We're actually enabling data analysts to use signals as a trigger for analysis. So what I'm going to do now is pass this over to Dan, who has a great customer case study where it's talking about Yellowfin Signals in action at the customer level.
Thank you for that, Ivan. So this is Dan here, and I really want to talk about one recent great example that I think is quite topical for this webinar, about one of our Japanese customers who have used signals to replace existing operational reporting. Now, the company is called Edge, and they're an aviation company that one of only two manufacturers in the world producing what they call kind of low-pressure turbine blades that are made from a titanium aluminium alloy for the next generation of jet engines. Now, the production of these turbine blades require a very, very specialist skills, as you can imagine, and an exacting quality, and things are measured to the thousandths of a millimetre. And manufacturing, from raw titanium through to final examination is a complex process with multiple inputs. Now, to essentially detect irregularities in the production process, Edge had teams of people working through manual reports to ascertain when there was a measurement change and then trace that manually back to the production workflow where they can resolve the issue. For example, an issue might be due to a certain batch of raw materials, which they then have to remove from production. Now, with the introduction of signals, they're able to identify patterns that lead to a manufacturing issue. So signals is automatically alerting their analysts to statistically significant deviations from the norm, meaning they no longer had teams to manually search this data to find these patterns. And in addition, they had an exact point in their manufacturing process where the issue occurred, meaning that they can actually go and remedy this immediately. Now, the impact to them was pretty significant. I mean, they reduced time to identify issues by 80%. And, time to create these manual reports they were doing by 90%. So it was a pretty big change for them. And now they're looking at using some of this technology as a predicting where issues occur in their production process to improve quality and their production rate further. So this is, for us, a very current case of replacing operation reporting with this new technology. With that, I'll throw it back to Ivan.
Thanks, Dan. Now, it's a great story here, but we all know that data is essentially useless without context. So it's very much part one of two big parts for a true AI and BI experience. Yellowfin signal solves really half the problem because every signal ultimately has a story within the enterprise. And without context, you can't really tell the story and provide true insight. So for this to work, the human story has to be part of the equation. And again, the second part of this, of the solution, is ultimately a storytelling product, Yellowfin Stories. It is essentially the best way to tell compelling stories with your data. So they provide the narratives that business needs to understand and act in their data. And if you really look at it, Yellowfin Stories provide the ability to bring Yellowfin signals to life. So let's use a dashboard example again here. When we build and share one, we make so many assumptions about the end user, especially across the larger enterprise. When I share the same dashboard across a team, there's so many ways to translate that in terms of insights to everyone, right? I could see a duck. They could be seeing a rabbit. So how can I be so sure that they're all seeing the same patterns and understanding the analysis the way I am? Now, with Yellowfin Stories, you have the opportunity to be explicit, to not only clearly communicate what we see in the data, but also what actions we should take collectively as a result. And that's the actual power of a really good story to actually move decisions within the company. Now, it's not just interpretation as well. It is the context. So much of what happens in your business, we know happens outside of your data. The data could be telling me there's a spike in sales for red dresses, for example. If I'm running an e-commerce company, that's important. That's great. But how can our data know that the impact of that was actually through Kate Moss wearing that red dress on the fashion spread on the cover of Vogue that month? They absolutely couldn't. So this is where those people who are living the business can actually use stories to bring that external context into a data story. And this is also about humans augmenting the machine and not the other way around. So if you really look at it, how does it really differ than everything else we see in the market today? Well, firstly, it's built for sharing. It's actually built for that. And our customers have actually provided great feedback that this is truly a data product that every business person can use. We know large organizations have multiple BI tools, but the story still needs to be told, which is why we're including the ability, and we've done that, to integrate content from 3 BI tools, which are quite popular out there today, into our stories. So we can reuse that content there. Now, it's built to be secure and governed as well. We can reuse our enterprise security across all content. And it's not just screenshots and wondering where data comes from. It actually has data lineage built in, so you know you can trust that story. So again, I want to get out of my PowerPoint and very quickly jump back into my signals. You can see there's a story tab there. So I'll left that for last. And what essentially is a person who's looking at a signal can go, all right, so let's all now discuss collectively together and actually decide on what to do with this signal. So you can either request someone to write a story for you, or you can start one. What I have today is something that's already written halfway, and that's essentially a story. So I can just edit that now. Okay, it's super simple. If you have actually written blogs on LinkedIn or Medium, it sort of behaves that way as well. So all the learnings you have translates to this. It's simply typing it out. Okay, so this is where we start talking about what's really causing that spike on April 11th for assaults. So one of the analysts discovered that, hey, on the same day, Ken Griffin made a $10 million donation to the Chicago Police Department. Now, we're not saying that that's actually causing anything, but, we can't dismiss the photo as a motivating factor here. So moving on, we also discovered earlier on through the signal that perhaps there might be a relationship, with the assault and spikes with weather. So an analyst has gone away and built a report and dropped that into the story, and we can actually clearly see that when the weather rises in Chicago, non-domestic crimes also rise as well. So there's a bit of a correlation, again, not causation, but meaningful to the analysis. So we can keep going and go, there's a spike in temperature, again, looking at that. And, temperature goes a long way to explain the sudden rise. And then we also then looked at sporting data. So you can actually see from the correlator tab earlier on, which I sort of failed to draw attention to, that the incident count seems to go up when the wind is null. So when the Chicago Bulls don't actually have a win. So we go and explore that again. And I've purposely not included a report here just so I can show you me dropping something into this story. So I can drop stories, reports, I can drop images, videos, I can even drop third-party analytical content from Power BI, Click and Tableau. But what I'm going to drop today is simply a report from Yellowfin, and you can simply then scroll to this recorder here. So I can search for bookmarks, I can search for snapshots, I can create new analysis on the fly if I wish. It's not created before, but I've created that already. And the data lineage that I was talking about is located here. So I know exactly where the data is coming from. I know who's created it, who's touched it, when it was modified, and where it all comes from. So I'm not blindly grabbing data. I know it's governed within the platform, and I know I can trust it. So I want to insert that into my story here, and then that's going to be the final piece of today's story, is actually tracking the fact that as the Chicago Bulls win their games and when they win big into spread, assaults actually decrease very sharply. But when they lose, and the closer they lose games, the more likely there is to be an increase in assaults. So again, this is the power of a really good story that you can write at any time, and you can simply publish that. Okay, so simply publish, and you can immediately share to your peers and colleagues immediately to make insights pervasive. One of the simple things we've included as part of the product is the fact that you can also track adoption as well. So you can track exactly who's read that story, so it's not something they're throwing out into the wild. And you can also track whether that's resonating with your audience by simply tracking the claps that you receive, which is the kudos. So going back to the PowerPoint now and sort of moving on. Now, the story here is really important, okay? And you can see how they all plan to work together with signals and stories to really provide an AI and BI experience. So stories provide the context, really help drive adoption within the enterprise. And what I'm going to do now is pass you off to Dan, who will talk a little bit more about how this is actually helping our customers as well.
Thank you, Ivan. So what we've seen with stories in particular is actually a 3 times adoption of people using analytics across the enterprise. And this was not something that we intended when we released this. It was just a really great byproduct of people using this as part of their platform. So if you think about a large organization, and within there you've got people that are technical savvy, and probably most of the people that are attending this webinar, we're comfortable with analytics and analytics tools. But the reality is that we're probably a niche group. Across a large organization, the majority of people don't live and breathe this stuff every day, and essentially just want insights to help them do their jobs. And one of our Signals customers, a technology company, was using Signals as part of their marketing team to more efficiently utilize digital spend. And in one example, they were sending their CMO Signals on Google Analytics data. And one of the ones actually suggested their mobile ads, while converting really well to capture leads from the website, they actually found a correlation with lower quality sales leads during that period. And when we talked to the CMO, the feedback was, well, while the signal is good, what do I do with this now? And what ended up happening in that example was their digital team were using those signals as part of analysis to determine why those mobile leads were performing and communicating that via a story, as well as their recommendation, which was to reroute spend to a different channel. So again, while this technology might immediately highlight something to us, it still needs to be interpreted correctly and ultimately action taken. And this is where having a vehicle like Stories that allows you to leverage this technology and provide understanding and clear action as well. And for that CMO and that marketing team, they saw much greater adoption across the board through analytics in general, using this vehicle to easily kind of consume it. So, I mean, it's similar in terms of the benefits. You've got your line of business people that are going to benefit for being able to actually get their details and numbers presented in a way that they can essentially kind of understand very, very easily and consume. And for analysts as well, it's about, for us, the reason why we've opened up to other platforms is because we understand that, people have multiple tools in organizations and want them to work in what's best, because ultimately you still need to tell that data story. And you can deliver great value in the form of that kind of easy-to-consume narrative. So kind of finally from us, and looping back to, I guess, the original question about this technology replacing the dashboard. And for us, in a lot of these use cases, it is a yes. And Ivan spoke about this earlier. But ultimately, dashboard is built for monitoring, and we still believe that that will be the case. If an exec wants to take a glance at the trend and make sure it's going in the right direction, that's still a very relevant scenario. But it's all the other scenarios that it's been shoehorned to, and this is where we're going to see, for us, that change. And, Wayne talked about this earlier, and we had a great example in Error Edge, that operational scenario, that's going to go for us. It's being replaced right now with a much better way. But for the departmental and exec level, I think we're going to see a lot of those use cases replaced once trust is established in the technology. I think for that, trust is the key. Trust in the algorithms are going to provide an accurate picture. There's transparency in what's happening. It's not just a black box, considering you're going to potentially be making, big business decisions, based on that. And also making sure it's going to surface what's important when it's needed. And you lose the need to go back to those dashboards to essentially kind of double check. I was thinking of an example here, and one that kind of came to mind was with Google Maps, and thinking about the process beforehand. And you get your phone book, your street directory out, you look up the address, you kind of find the map, and then through the multiple pages, you try to kind of plan your route. And then you start driving, you kind of check the traffic conditions on the radio, you might adjust your route, you might then recheck the map during the drive, to then finally kind of get to your destination. And now, you put an address, and it just gives you the most efficient route. And, all that massive data that's going through, the traffic conditions, the weather, the road works, it's automatically adjusting and finding you the best path. And we just trust it now, often, to the detriment of our own sense of direction, but that's another story. But, in the early days, I remember hearing tales about Google sending you to wild and wacky places and, into oceans and through walls. But as the technology advanced, there's no way we'd go back to the old street directory, And the same goes for a lot of these kind of dashboard use cases. Once the technology can provide us with that piece of insight in the most efficient way, we won't need to go back to the old ways. And that really concludes our part of the discussion today. I'll throw back to Eric.
Okay, good. Well, folks, we do archive all these webinars for later viewing. We've got a hard stop here. Yours truly does today, but thank you very much for your time and attention. Thanks to Wayne Eckerson, and of course, thanks to the folks at Yellowfin. The archive should be up by tomorrow, but as you can see, AI plus BI is the future of intelligence. So big stuff is happening. I love the autonomous intelligence concept. I do believe we're going to have this new kind of depth perception thanks to AI, thanks to analytics, thanks to all these technologies really converging and creating a really powerful confluence. And with that, we're going to bid you farewell, folks. Thanks again for your time and attention. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.